This is the Familybuilding Podcast. I'm your host, attorney Ted Youmans. We hope that the story that you're about to hear will encourage you to engage in the journey called adoption. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the podcast. We've got two really special guests speaking today about foster care, about special needs. This is Keith and his beautiful wife, Jamie. I had the great privilege of representing them in a very recent adoption that we just finalized about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I was so impressed with this couple. When we were at the final adoption, we had the county council that represented social services actually come in court on her day off because she was so impressed with this couple and wanted to see the finalization of their fifth child. So we're going to be talking about these children that they have, and I hope it rends your heart and I hope it touches your heart like it's touched mine. But how you doing, Keith and Jamie?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Well, we talked a little bit about these 5 children. Could you give us a rundown of these children and their ages to begin with?
Sure, yeah.
So we've got AJ, who's 8 years old, Aiden, who's 6, Avery, who's 4, Akri, who's 3, and Addie, who's 2.
The first 2 of those children are your biological children, is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's correct.
And you're going to tell us about how you were called or directed to go into foster care and ultimately to adopt these other 3 children. When you guys first got married, did you ever talk about the number of children that you wanted to have?
We did before we got married, and I said I wanted 2 or 3.
I wanted
and
5.
I was shocked when my would-be fiance said that she wanted 5 kids. And I thought, that we'll just have to work through that later on. I'm not sure how we'll get through that, but here we are 5 kids later. So
Let me start by asking you, Keith, if you would have known then what you know now, would you have been intimidated by the family that God had prepared for you to have?
I think a little bit, but if I had known just how, special and rewarding and fulfilling it would be, that aspect as well, at the same time I wouldn't be.
Yeah. How about you, Jamie? When you look back, did you ever have an idea that this is what your family would look like?
No. And it's funny. I think the Lord was putting those, preparing me for it, putting those seeds before I had kids. But I was like, no, God, no special needs. I can't handle it. But it's just amazing how He totally changed my heart and put us in a position where we were seeking out special needs kids. It's literally only something God can do. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Well, take us through the children first and just describe the special needs that each one has.
So yeah, our oldest is AJ, and he is what really brought us into this world of special needs. So he has congenital heart disease. So he's had 3 open heart surgeries. What's kind of additionally made him special needs is when he was 2.5 weeks old, he had his first open heart surgery, and he actually coded. So his heart stopped beating, and they were doing CPR on him for 53 minutes. So he's a little miracle, but he does have brain damage from that and epilepsy. So that's impacted his ability to learn. And everything. He's got a few other quirky, funky things like 1 kidney and a couple bald spots and stuff, but he's our super sweet boy. So that's kind of him. And then our second son, this was actually, his medical needs kind of popped up after we had started fostering, but he needed 2 brain surgeries because he had a mass in the very middle of his brain. So they were able to take that out and clear him, and he's doing great now, but he also has autism. And then our daughter Avery, who's adopted, she has muscular dystrophy, which is a degenerative muscle disease, but she's doing very well. She's super sweet and quirky, and then she started off on a G-tube, but now is able to eat by mouth, so she's doing really good. And then our sweet Zachy is autistic and nonverbal, and then Addie is G-tube dependent. We're hoping that someday she'll be able to eat. She's actually going to have surgery at the end of the month to try to reconstruct her mouth because she has some issues there. And then she's got a genetic disorder, and then a brain issue, so a brain malformation where the 2 sides of her brain don't really talk to each other, but she can walk, she She dances, she is trying to talk. She's just a little miracle too. She's the sweetest thing ever. She captures everyone's hearts wherever she goes. She's definitely the most charismatic of all of them.
Like I mentioned to you, in the 37 years now that I've been practicing law, and we get into special needs adoptions pretty often.
Oh,
I don't know, it's less than a handful of families that we've met like you that have taken on this amazing ministry and workload of raising these kids. So you had your second child, Aiden, and then you decided at that point you're going to get into foster care. How did that decision come about?
God had just slowly placed adoption on our hearts actually before he was born. So after AJ, before Aiden, and our only question was, okay, how many more biological kids do we have? So we were praying about that, and became pregnant with Aiden, and Jamie was super sick with like severe morning sickness to the point where she was throwing up 8 times a day. She actually had a blood clot from just lying around all the time because that's all she could do. And she actually almost died. And of course, since Aiden was inside of her, he almost died too. And so we kind of, took that as a sign from the Lord, like, this is the last one, and, move forward with adoption. And, we kind of investigated the options and decided to go with foster care adoption after that. So
it's just neat, like, towards the end as we were weighing like private versus foster, I feel like Keith really led us towards fostering, and I wanted to do that as well, but he brought up like there are kids right here, right in Orange County, right at our hospitals that need us. Of course, there's kids all over the world, right? There's like, but we just really felt called to like the kids. And like Avery was born at St. Jude's down the street from our house, and then the other kids, I think they were born in Fountain Valley or something. So, like, it's just so local, and that's been so amazing to really serve right where we are and, reach those kids. So
when foster parents or prospective adoptive parents get home studied, they look at your strengths and your weaknesses as a couple. Did you specifically get home studied to take in a special needs child?
Yeah, they give you like a sheet, so everyone kind of goes through the same process, at least in terms of getting your home checked and all of that, but then they give you a sheet of like different needs that you're open to. And so we checked a lot of boxes just, based on our experience, and then they kind of know, it's almost like interview-like, that they're kind of like, oh, you're interested in that, like why? And then the really neat thing is for each child you take, social services will make sure you're trained on their specific needs, and that's usually done at CHOC or by the doctors. They'll connect you with a specialist before.
So you don't need any
place.
specific training on a whole bunch of things, in terms of special needs before you get a placement. They'll
train
give
you specifically.
Any training you need.
Yeah.
So you took in Avery. We talked a little bit before we got on, Keith. I know you have a heart to encourage people to foster care. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I think foster care is a huge need. Whether you just have the kid for a month or you end up adopting them, and for any age too. There's a need from newborn babies to teenagers. So it's the need is there. Like, that's one thing I didn't realize so much about before we started doing it. I thought there were probably way more people that were willing to foster and adopt than there were, kids that had that need, but it's actually the other way around.
Let's talk about some of the dynamics in the foster care cases that you got involved with. What people fear are that birth parents may reunify, there may be a relative that comes in that wants to care for the child. Let's talk about any of those with Avery Akinati. Did you have to face any of those challenges?
With Avery, at one point during her case, we'd had her for 9 months, and we had met no biological family, but the social worker was like, we may have found grandparents because we may have found her, her dad or whatever. And so there was a time where we're like, oh my gosh, like, we might lose her, she might, go to them. But, the whole time you're always preparing your heart that, as hard as it would be, if a child can be safely reunified with their family, that's something you have to celebrate. That's something that God would call us to celebrate, and if you're really invested in what's best for that child, like if they can be with their biological family, if that's safe and appropriate, like that's something we want to encourage. So that was really helpful. It turned out it wasn't her dad, it wasn't her grandparents, but there's a lot of different highs and lows in the system. So we went from basically no involvement, we never met anyone for Avery's case, to Zachy and Addie's. We were very involved. We met so many relatives. We met both grandmas, we met uncles, we met great grandma. So, it can be challenging, but there is something really special about being able to offer grace, being able to share the gospel, being able to stand in the gap with healthy boundaries and stuff. So, it's not easy, but it's way less scary than you think it's going to be, and it's actually really rewarding.
And we've had other placements that have gone back to some biological family members. So obviously it's hard. There's a kind of a loss when they leave your house, but it's also a happy thing too.
How many other children have you fostered other than the 3 that you ended up adopting?
I think including the short-term ones, it's been 4 other children.
We didn't have any of the other ones for super long. Like one was 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and he went to his grandma. But it was incredible. He was special needs too, and his grandma was just fighting so hard for him. And we could tell she was a good, safe person. She was in another county. And so we got to actually advocate, being like, no, how quickly can we reunite him with his grandma, because that is where he needs to be. And so that was a really precious thing, and we've stayed in contact. I think I texted with her last year or something. Yeah, it was a neat opportunity.
We've seen cases where foster parents were so giving and graceful with the birth parents and their extended family that if something went wrong in that biological family, or with the caregiver, say the grandmother, we've had our clients call back even a year or 2 after the case was over, with the birth parents asking for help. So I could see that happening with you guys. So you were saying in regards to Addie's case there, where you met all these relatives. And that was a case that I was there in court with you. And I remember, Jamie, your heart. We talked a lot about, and we talked to our clients about our heart. Like it goes before us. And you had already planted so many good seeds in the birth parents. I think especially regarding the mother, the birth mother. Is that correct? You got really connected with her.
Yeah, it was neat because with the situation, we didn't actually even have to meet them, because we had, our visits were monitored and transported. I think the county was so grateful for us taking this kiddo with a G-tube, and we're just like, hey, we've got all these kids, you really got to help us out here. We've got so many, doctor's appointments and stuff. And they're like, oh, okay. So, but we sought that out. We're like, you know what? We need to meet them. We need to connect with them. No matter what happens, it's just good to have that. And I feel like the Lord really blessed that. I got to share the gospel with them. I got to be there at court, and it was kind of interesting. I thought they were going to be coming to the hearing, but I think maybe my text even prompted them to come, because I texted them, I'm like, hey, I'm here. This is a hard day. If you need a hug, just let me know. And I didn't want them to be surprised and be like, oh, what's she doing here, So that was neat. Then it kind of went into me even comforting her and her kind of sleeping on me, to them inviting me to come into the courtroom with them to, witness the rights being terminated and everything. And it was just a really powerful day of just God working when you're just open to those hard yeses to him, I think is really what it boils down to.
When you really treat people like you would want to be treated if you were in their position, when you don't judge them, when you don't condemn them, you saw them, you honored them for who they were and where they were in their lives, and you honored them so well. And I think what that really gains for prospective adoptive parents, whether you're fostering, whether it's another type of adoption, is when you treat people that way, they actually they actually consent to the adoption. Even though there's a court entering an order, their hearts had really changed in this case. So we just really appreciate working with clients like you, because when it's just a process that terminates parental rights and they walk out, there's so much unfinished business, and it really goes down to the next generation, to these children. And how wonderful that you guys have the story to tell them about how you've respected them, how you've honored them, how you're still in touch with them. I asked you at the final hearing if you're in touch and sending updates, and you're just very open, and tell us what that's going to look like in the future, in from what you can tell right now.
Yeah, so we have a Google Drive link that we set up for them that we gave all the family access to. So we just, upload a picture to like a week. And so, because there is so many of them, and that way they can kind of watch them grow up. I mean, there are some like safety concerns and addiction concerns, still. So we're not doing like in-person visits, but we've told, especially the parents, we're like, hey, we just encourage you to use this time to do what you need to do so that, you can be the role model that we would love to see you be and stuff. So.
And we also do quarterly updates, upon request. They can email us, and we, send them a paragraph or two on each child and how they're doing, and try to keep them updated that way.
Well, are you concerned that the agency is going to be calling you again with another special child, or have you told them, time out, we need a
Yeah. Even if they do, the answer is no, at least for now, until we get a 15-passenger van.
Yeah. Speak to our audience here, and just in your own individual ways, how would you encourage someone that has a special needs child, that maybe is placed with a special needs child, and maybe finds out, like your second, Aiden, maybe 2 years later, can you do it? I mean, you're doing it.
Yeah.
Can others do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I would just encourage people to view that child how God views them. And that's, that special needs child is no less valuable than, a child that's totally typical and straight A student, and it's gonna get into a, elite college and make you proud and stuff. Like, in God's eyes, there's no difference between, those two kids. And so I've had to examine, like, why would I feel disappointed that a kid has special needs? And I felt kind of convicted in my heart about that. I shouldn't feel like that. I should just view them like God views them. So that's something that I've learned, and I would encourage other people to try to do that too.
Well, Jamie, I know that you've been given the great privilege to be a stay-at-home mom. How many appointments, and what is your how many miles are you putting on?
Well, it is really nice. The Lord has kind of provided for us that Keith works from home and owns his own business. So that has really allowed us a lot of flexibility for, like, okay, this one's napping, or this one has a doctor's appointment. Can you pick up that one from school? So it is quite busy. I think I figured out between all of them, I think we have like 70 hours of therapy a week. A lot of it is simultaneous. So there'll be like 3 of them receiving ABA like at the same time. And then a lot of it's at home. So, part of it too has just been kind of, changing our expectations and being like, oh no, like a lot of families are doing Disneyland, we're doing, ABA today or whatever. But I think too, like kind of what Keith was saying, like God is going to use you wherever you're at. And if he's called you to special needs, he's got people for you to touch that you're only going to be able to do through these contacts that we've had. And we've just seen him work just over and over again in exactly the situation that we are. And another like something that's really been encouraging to me as a special needs mom is I believe it's in the book of Luke, but it's the story of Jesus healing a blind man. And he's on the road and he's pleading for Jesus to heal him, and his disciples are like, okay, so who sinned? Was it this man or his parents? Right. And Jesus says, neither. No. He was born blind that the works of God might be displayed in his life. And I just look at that with each one of our kids. They are born so that the works of God will be displayed in their life. Regardless if God heals them or not, he has specific things for them that he can only accomplish through their special needs. And so that's been like really motivating and encouraging, I think, for both of us.
Well, you guys have impacted me, and I know that you've impacted everybody that knows you, everybody, every friend, every church member, every place you go. You really are, really demonstrating in a very tangible way God's love for the broken, for the world. We're all broken. We all are special needs, if you really think about it. We are just so encouraged. I'm so glad that you came on and told this story. I just want to ask one other question. Keith, and I'm going to focus in on you, Keith. How has this changed you as a dad and a father? Being a stay-at-home dad, I know you're a very successful businessman, but how's it changed you as a man? And what would you say to fathers, to husbands out there regarding being a full-time dad almost, right?
Yeah.
Really pitching in.
Yeah, he does.
I would say I've learned how just rewarding and fulfilling it is. The Bible says that it's better to give than to receive. And I've just learned how incredibly true that is. I would say to dads or prospective dads, there's a lot of hesitancy to become a dad or adoptive dad, a lot of fear of that, a lot of fear of the unknown or fear of commitment or whatever. But I would just say, if God's placed it on your heart, just jump in because it's so worth it. So.
Well, you should tell them your favorite quote.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we were, thinking about adopting or fostering, there's this really good quote this short quote that really struck me, and it said, "If not you, then who? If not now, then when?"
Yeah.
And that just really struck me because.
Yeah.
At some point, somebody needs to take action to help and just encourage people to jump in and be the person that some child out there needs.
Yeah. Well, thank you. These 5 children have a future and a hope because of your dedication and love for one another and love for them. And we hope that this would challenge you if you're listening to this. Maybe you discover there is another level of love, another level of commitment, another level of sacrifice. I have learned that in my life. There's always another level. God always provides that, but especially when it comes to loving these little children. And so you're such great demonstrations of that. We love you, we honor you, and we really thank you for being on this podcast.
Our
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.